Day 5 of action at the ICC Men's T20 World Cup 2026 is over, and boy, was it the most enthralling cricket that we have seen so far. Three games, all three games were of full member nations, and honestly, it was one of the best days of the tournament so far. The day began in the morning with probably one of the most outrageous games of cricket I've ever seen. South Africa taking on Afghanistan in Ahmedabad. When the game started, it was 11:30 at night here in, and when I woke up in the middle of the night to check the score, but there were about 5 overs left in the run chase. So I just thought, let me just watch the end and then I'll sleep. But the game just never ended, and it just went on and on. We had two super overs, and I think the last 5 overs, the game, for it to end from that point, it took about 1.5 hours, which is just unbelievable. But it all culminated to a South African victory, which is what will be reflected in the points table at the end of the day. To be honest, if you are a fan of quality cricket, this game wouldn't have really pleased you, because the kind of decision making that was done by Afghanistan and the basic skills going missing with South Africa in the field, it was just both teams trying to lose, but they just weren't able to close the deal. And in the end, you had South Africa giving up on losing and taking the victory. It was a bizarre game of cricket. There were a lot of things to really talk about. Afghanistan, you had Gurbaz play an incredible knock, and then he got out. And the problem for them was they lost wickets in clusters at all points, which made it really difficult for them to continue the momentum they had built. At one stage, they were well and truly out of the game when they needed about, I think, 13 of the final over with 9 down. And then Noor Ahmed smashed a 6, and Kagiso Rabada, I don't know what was he thinking when he overstepped twice in the final over. And then when they needed 2 runs of 3 balls, I think they just forgot that Faruqi can also bat, because there was no need of taking a risky two there in the first place. To be very honest, it wasn't even a risky two, but Fazalak Faruqi just didn't respond like a cricketer with some experience of playing cricket would. I don't know what was he thinking while running. He hardly put any effort, didn't dive, didn't even ground his bat, and he was run out. And then we went into all the drama of the super over. The first super over, again, I don't know who is taking the decisions there. Afghanistan did smash 17, and they had to defend 18, which would be quite comfortable. They gave the ball to Faruqi, and he did get Brevis out as well. And then when they needed 7 of the last ball, Tristan Stuff smashed a 6, and we went to another super over. And I think they've changed the rules that once you're out in the super over, only then you can't come back to bat, which wasn't the case before. But a bowler cannot bowl another over, which is a bit a skewed kind of a rule, but let's ignore that for now. Tristan Stubbs and Miller returned in the second super over, and for some bizarre reason, you had Azmatullah Omarzai bowling the super over when you had the option of Noor Ahmed, Rashid Khan, Mujibur Rahman, and Rashid Khan actually had done really well in the game. So I don't know who's taking decisions there. Jonathan Trott is definitely on a notice period, but you still can't take such bad decisions one after the other. Omarzai went for 23, and they needed 24 to win in the run chase. And guess what? That wasn't the only bad decisions they took, because here they were again sending Mohammad Nabi and Azmatullah Omarzai to chase 24 when best batter Rahmanullah Gurbaz, who is eligible to come out to bat, didn't come, and he's been slated to come at 1 down. So you have to give your 3 names before you start the super over. So they decided to give Gurbaz his name, but just not to open and come at number 3 instead, which is horrendous. And even if you are on notice period, if I were the Afghanistan decision makers, I would sack Trot right now in the middle of the tournament if he was the one who's taken this decision one after the other, because Nabi misses one, he gets out the next, and you're left with 24 of 4, and somehow Still, Afghanistan aren't out of it. Gurbaz does come out to bat. He smashes three sixes in three balls, which is just a script even Jai Shah can't write, if I'm being honest. And then when they need six of the last ball, Maharaj actually bowls a wide. So he opens up another opportunity for Afghanistan to take this game into the third super over, which would have, I don't know if you have ever seen something like this before. But in some ways, I think that wide ball being bowled and the option of a boundary being opened to Gurbaz kind of shifted his thought process a bit, because I just feel that he wasn't thinking about the boundary on the final ball, and he was looking to just get it over the fielder so he can get a boundary. And that somewhat played with his mind a bit, and he got out of the final ball when they needed five to win. Complete heartbreak for Gurbaz. He scored over 100 runs across the game, and his team lost. I would say this was one of the greatest games from an entertainment point of view. But if you are a coach, you better not show this game to your students. And then we moved on to the second game, which had probably been halfway done by the time the first game ended. It was Australia taking on Ireland. Australia lost Mitchell Marsh to an unfortunate injury, so he's ruled out. Steve Smith will come and replace him. So Travis Head was leading the side today. Australia scored 182 in their 20 overs. I think this was a bit of a tactical masterclass from Australia. They assessed the conditions really early into the game and realized that there's no point trying to just slog and get to a big score. So instead, they focused on just reducing the number of dots, rotated strike. They were really good with running between the wickets, kept running twos, and eventually maximized their score and took it to 182. I think Ireland should have never been conceding that much in the first place. 150 itself looked like a big score, but somehow they stretched their resources and got two, and at that very stage, it was certain that Ireland aren't going to get it. In the end, Ireland were bowled out for 115. I would say they were in the game for a total of maybe 5 overs out of the entire 20, where they had a realistic chance. Nathan Ellis picked up a 4 for, Adam Zampa as well picked up a 4 for. The two bowlers who we all were looking forward to watching in these conditions, both of them delivered, and that was pretty much it. And Ireland also are most certainly out of this tournament. Then you move on to the third game, which for me was one of the marquee games of the day. West Indies taking on England in Wankhede, kind of a 10-year flashback for England. And that is exactly how this game went. West Indies batted first and on a very true Wankhede pitch put up 196 on the board. There was a bit of turn, and fortunately for them, there was no dew, or it was very, very little. They did stumble at the start, but Finn Rutherford was really good for them at number 5, and others batted around him, and they got a big score. I think Archer's form is a big worry for England, because this is the second game in a row where he's been found out, not necessarily by him bowling poorly either. It's not that he's missing his line of length, it's just that the batters are finding it easy to pick him and hit him, which is a big concern. I think England were a bit wrong on the tactical front, giving Will Jacks 2 overs there, and they really didn't need to. And even after him going for about 18 in his first, they still persisted with him with another over. Adil Rashid came back really well after his bleep in the last game, which also goes on to show that what Nepal did is just unreal, playing him the way they did. And then England came out to chase, and Phil Salt and Butler got off the blocks really quickly. And I thought it's one of those games where England chase it down, one down in 15 overs or something. But Romario Shepherd came in, got the big scalp of Phil Salt. I don't know why, but never bowled after that. It was just the only over he got. But from then on, it was all about the West Indian spinners. They really assessed the conditions really well, something England failed to do. And they used their resources really well. They had added Roston Chase to the 11 specifically for this situation, and he did really well along with Gudakesh Moti. And of course, Shamar Joseph was very good in the death as well, and Akil Hossain in the power play. So the bowling really stood up for them, and England faltered. big time there. I would say 197 was chaseable, but England just didn't apply themselves all that well. Sam Curran kept the flame burning, but at no point did he look like he would go on to win it for them. So I would say West Indies are more or less certainly through this group. England are now placed third, and that net run rate can be a worry for them because they play Scotland next, and that becomes kind of a virtual knockout game. And the fact that they have never beaten a European nation in T20 World Cups will be on the back of their minds, even though on paper they should quite comfortably win that game. But you never know the kind of cricket they've played in the first two games. Anything can happen at the Eden Gardens. But that's for another day. Let us talk about the day which is coming up, day 6 of action, 3 games. It all begins in the morning with Sri Lanka taking on Oman at Palekele, the first game at that venue in this World Cup. I don't know why the hosts are playing on a random Thursday morning, to be very honest, but they are. So I don't know how the crowd will be for that game. And then in the afternoon, you've got Italy taking on Nepal in Mumbai again. It's kind of a hub for Nepal this World Cup. They'll of course have a lot of crowd there because the Nepalis are always in large numbers supporting their team. That will be an interesting game. Italy will be without their skipper Wayne Madsen, but I think Nepal should get through with that win, and that will open up Group C even more because it brings Nepal into the picture as well, along with England and Scotland. And then the last game, India take on Namibia in Delhi. It's not going to be a big challenge for India, let's be honest, even though USA did trouble them. But I don't expect that to happen again because I feel the conditions will favor the Indian spinners a lot. And if India bowl first, then the game is going to be very one sided, I would say, because I don't see Namibia crossing 120 against India if they bat first, or even if they bat second for that matter. So I think tomorrow will be not at all, not quite as exciting as today, but we'll still get to see the groups progressing towards the more exciting part of the tournament. Let's hope for the best. And until tomorrow, this is Ved signing off.